Hey,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome to the first inaugural broadcast of this wonderful new Boldly Trekking podcast that we're doing. And basically, this is I, Ash, and Sean,
Yep.
who is the commander in chief of the Federation, of the International Starfleet Fan Club ship of the Beowulf.
Yep.
And so we are going to talk Trek. I'm even wearing my NX-01 hat. I'm representing. Um, and we got up in the background there. You can see some of my ships that I've built. So I got some street cred going on. Um, or that be ship cred? I don't know.
Ship cred.
It's
Yeah,
ship
definitely.
cred. Don't
Ship cred.
don't be getting involved in my ship. Anyway, so, if Sean, if you want to tell people what we are doing here.
Well, we're going to be discussing the dynamics and the whole aspects of how the Star Trek universe works in terms of like the uh, movement and scale of space and traveling at warp speeds, and essentially uh, going over the problems and issues regarding that. So if you want to find out all about the world of Star Trek in terms of what's going on with getting from place to place and the problems therein, and discussions on economics, military support, and exploration. Hey, we got you covered. We're here for you.
Now, that being said, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was released the new Section 31 straight to video movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It was straight from the '90s, man. Straight from the '90s.
I'm sorry. It's like they took, like a bad Guardians of the Galaxy and mixed it in with Mission Impossible, and then took all of the pseudoscience and just chucked it out the window. Like oh yeah, and whoever the director was had no idea how to shoot an action movie. Everything was the shaky cam like from Cloverfield. It
Yeah.
was, uh, but like one thing that just like irked me, and this is getting back to one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight, which
Mm-hmm.
is actual distances and how long it would take to
Mm-hmm.
travel,
Yeah.
across the Federation. Like one of the things that irked me is they've got to get from point A to point B. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who
Mm-hmm.
hasn't had their puppy kicked yet and still wants to watch the movie. Um, and so they have to, oh, the evil forces coming through this nebula over here in 4 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got to get from this planet to that nebula in 4 hours in this broke down ship that barely is moving and was part of a water feature. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
But we fixed it. We fixed
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah, we fixed it by putting in a piece.
A
We just,
fuse. A
yeah,
fuse.
basically, what that's what it was. It was a technobabble fuse,
Mm-hmm.
and they put in the fuse. Everything worked amazingly. I mean, I don't know why they don't use this ship as a frontline unit for in war. It worked so well. And then how did they get that far in 3 hours?
I don't think
All
they
right.
could, to be honest with you.
I mean, that
It's actually a
nebula had
discussion
to
point.
be like as far away as Mars. All
Mm-hmm.
right. In which case, it would have completely blanketed the sky, and they all would have been dead from radiation. Um.
Why is my hair falling? Oh wait, I don't have any hair.
Oh yeah, you were there. You were there. I was there. The hair's gone. Um. No, so like okay, so that was one of the first things that I wanted to talk about. And one of the things that led us to, deciding, hey, let's go ahead and do a podcast was
Mm-hmm.
just general distances.
Right.
Because in the original TOS from the research I've done,
Mm-hmm.
Kirk basically says that the Federation is 1,000 light years wide.
Mm-hmm.
And By the time the next generation rolled around, they were out to 8,000 light years wide.
Mhm.
But as you well know, Sean, you could actually quote it verbatim. How long did they say it took them to get to Farpoint?
Well, they actually been the ship was commissioned and was traveling to Farpoint, and they were it's at least 2 to 4 weeks from what I understood.
Right.
So Riker was being dropped off by the Hood. So it wasn't like they could just simply go ahead and meet with the Hood on the route. They had to actually have the Hood drop him off at Farpoint. So it wasn't like a quick quick run over to Farpoint Station.
Uh, According to Star Trek lore, the Enterprise D's journey to Farpoint, as depicted in the Next Generation series premiere, took approximately 2 weeks at warp speed,
Mm-hmm.
is what they're
And that's
saying.
not even counting the whole incident with Q, which you know,
Yeah.
getting into the saucers traveling by impulse power to the planet after getting disconnected.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, let's keep in mind that, writers aren't necessarily the best at, scientific continuity.
Speed of
Um,
narrative, man. Speed of narrative.
yeah, they traveled at the speed of narrative. And only in where they were using their plot shields. But no, and that's what it was just. It's a far distance, and that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how, due to budgetary constraints and whatnot, the depiction in the canon literature and movies and TV shows do not show how staggeringly large the Federation would be just in manpower and number of ships and all the stuff like
Yeah.
that. They would be so huge.
Right.
I think I ran the numbers at one point and just extrapolated up from, you know, what the U.S. military has for hardware. Extrapolate that out to a planetary scale. All
Right.
right. Then multiply that by the number of the number of planets that canonically are in the United Federation of Planets, and it came up to just capital ships alone, where the capital ships like the Miranda, the Enterprise, the big cruisers and stuff like that would be the same as destroyers and aircraft carriers and whatnot in our modern Navy. It came up to like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
those cruising
Yeah.
around. And that doesn't include all the support craft and everything else involved, and merchant marine, and then just basic logistics and stuff like that. I am firmly of the mind that what little bit they choose to depict is just a bare whiff, a skeleton of what it would truly be in order to run something that is 8,000 light years wide.
Yeah. It's actually one of the problems is, and I'm gonna break it down here in just a moment. But
Oh yeah.
I want to interject a piece of Douglas Adams because it's perfect for it. Space is big, really
Oh
big.
yeah.
You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is that, like, when you look at the entire volume of space, you're not talking like, oh, it's 50 light years wide, a little bubble, or even 100 light years wide. You're talking like a vast volume, like the original TOS series, the original Star Trek series. Kirk and company basically are bebopping around in a area that's probably no more than, say, 100 to maybe 250 light years out from Earth most of the time. That's pretty much it. But even that is a lot of space. When you get up to TNG, Star Trek Next Generation, we use a lot of abbreviations here.
Yeah.
Um, you're talking like the minimum volume for the Federation, just to sort of give you a sort of framework, is that it's 8,000 light years wide. It's probably about 4,000 to 5,000 light years towards the core, out to the edge of the disk, and then it's 1,000 deep, because when you look at the galaxy, right, the
Right.
disk itself is about 1,000 light years deep, and that's
Very
assuming
cool.
the Federation goes all the way through. Okay,
Yeah, it's turtles
so
the whole way down.
so the thing is that when people are looking at volume, or when you think about volume, you're looking at something around 36 million cubic light years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of space. That's
That
a
is.
lot of space.
And you had sent me I'll go ahead and present it here really quick. You had sent me the old scale.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. Window. Do. The
By the
old
way, the
scale of, according to warp speed on the old TOS warp scale,
mhm,
and how long it would take to traverse. And if you look, I mean, normally they were traveling at like, warp 5, warp 6 as a, as a cruising speed.
mhm,
And in order to get just 20 light years away, that would take a month at warp 6.
mhm,
And that's just 20 light years. That's not the full 1,000 light years
mhm.
across.
Oh yeah.
And just that volume of space, even, let me stop the sharing.
Mhm.
That volume of space, and then you throw in the number of planets in there and the number of star systems and all the stuff like that. That is a large volume of resources that, and just to get from A to B. I mean, how far away was Vulcan from Earth?
Vulcan has 40 Eridani A as a star. So that's
Yeah.
16.4 light years. I actually broke this down for us.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So to just to sort of frame this for you from Star Trek the motion picture, right? Scotty's telling Spock, "We can get you back to Vulcan in 4 days, Mister Spock." After the whole thing with V'ger is over and they're doing their shakedown cruise. Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to break it down for you in terms of how fast you would need to be able to get there first, and then I'm going to sort of reference that scale that you were talking about. So let's say you decided that you want to go to Vulcan and you had to traverse 16.4 light years in 4 days. That comes out to basically needing to travel, uh, you know, point zero, or at least convert travel time to years. You'd take 4 days, and it's basically 0.01906 years. Okay, that's 4 days out of your calendar.
Right.
And then, so what you do is you times or divide 16.4 light years divided by 0.01096 years, and it comes out to you have to travel 1,497.26 C. So what that means is you got to be booking on the old scale. You got to be hitting warp 12 just to get to Vulcan in 4 days, because at warp 12 on the old scale, per what was originally given, it's 12 times 12 times 12, just so you know. So
Yeah.
it's a cubic power of 3. So that is pegging the engines as hard as you can go to get to Vulcan in 4 days. I don't think Scotty's going to be happy about that, which leads to the whole thing about Scotty sweating bullets. But if you take it up to the power of 4, actually it's fine. The ship at warp 8, which is per David Kimball's blueprints for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, shows the Enterprise, and when you look at the maximum safe cruising speed, it's warp 8. So the maximum safe cruising speed at warp 8, if you take it to the 4th power, is 4,096 C. So hey, you can make it to Vulcan in no time, and you'll be fine. Doesn't stress the ship out, doesn't cause any wear and tear or undue wear and tear, and Scotty can live up to his reputation as a miracle worker. So
But
uh, these
that's
things
the
are
new
like,
engines. That's the new engines in the TMP. If we're
Mhm.
going off of the older engines in the TOS, then you're probably looking at, probably close to 2 to 3 weeks to get there.
Well, at warp 6, basically you take the calculation of 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, which I believe still hits within the range. I mean, I can look at it here real quick. I think I got it marked down.
See,
Uh,
5 light years would have been 8.4 days. So you basically multiply that by three. That would have been 24 days.
right.
Right. And if they traveled, for, like Star Trek Enterprise, where they maxed out at warp 5 and they were cruising at, like warp 3,
Hmm.
that would have been, for according to this chart that you have. Let
Hmm.
me share that again. Hold on. Screen. According to the chart here, at warp 3, for 5 light years would have been 68 days. So multiply that by 3. You're basically coming in at close to 200 days
Oh, yeah.
to get from Earth to Vulcan.
Yeah. You remember
And
the whole slow boat to China thing that we talked about?
oh yeah, and that's the whole thing here. Is if you remember in one of the episodes where Merryweather in Enterprise goes back and is talking to his family on their warped 2 freighter,
Yeah.
they said that it would take them years to get from one star system to another,
Hmm.
and that bears fruit because at a 5 light year, which is slightly larger than from here to Alpha Centauri, that's 228 days.
Hmm.
So that just it quickly adds up if you don't have that exponential multiplicative factor you know
Oh, yeah.
that
Well,
we
the other
all
thing is that you cannot reasonably protect the Federation with the cubic or the power
no
of 3 warp formula, because the thing is that
you
one of the
can't.
things that comes out is when you look at the numbers, what ends up happening is to put a projection, to project force, to essentially borrow a military idea, to project force and be able to assert your domain, you have to be able to get your forces from point A to point B where they need to be in a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, the forces can set up whatever and entrench themselves, and you basically lost your
Oh
space or
yeah,
whatever.
they would be there. They would have strip mined everything out and been gone before you could react.
Yeah.
And
So,
that's the reason I also feel that one thing that was underrepresented was local um, local forces.
mhm.
They would have to have their own thing. That's the reason that the Federation ships were so distinctive
Mhm.
with their shape. With the saucer and the nacelles. That's a
Mhm.
distinct Federation. You see it. Those are the Feds.
Mhm.
Uh, they're the Feds.
Thanks.
Don't worry, we're the government. We're here to help. Um,
We're going to help
but
you. We'll help
yeah,
you a lot. You'll like it.
yeah, you like it whether you like it or not. It's a struggle snuggle. Um,
We'll give
but
you some kisses.
but that being said, that's
Mhm.
one thing that I think they should have showed more of
Mhm.
was the interaction with like the local system governors or whatever
Oh,
maybe,
yeah.
and their local forces that they have.
Mhm.
Um, I think that would have been great to see. And a matter of fact, that was one of the things that I had to talk about was imperialism in the Federation. No, life on the border, economic disparities. I had a lot of
Mhm.
these things.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
We've come
but
up with a lot of ideas.
what's that?
I said we've come up with a lot of ideas.
Yeah, we did. But the thing is that I think that the Federation would have rolled in as the heavy hand when necessary.
Hmm.
But until then, it would have been expected that the local militias would have handled things, and
Okay.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is because the sheer cost in order to field these capital ships was just egregious.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that I realized that they needed to build tension in the story and all this stuff
Hmm.
like that. But when you had, basically just some, beefed up trader ship that had a couple extra things strapped to it is all of a sudden batting around a capital ship like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really think that was very,
Well thought out.
representative of what would have happened.
Look, I got my pew pews. I'm going to take on the ship with a Type X phaser array. Oh,
Yeah,
it'll work out real well.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I can't count the number of times that a little bitty bird of prey has brought the Enterprise D to its knees,
mhm.
and this thing can it's just it's plot driven.
Mhm.
That's all there is to it. But
Oh,
that's what we're here for. We're here to set the record straight. Um,
so I want to give a like interjection on the distances, just to frame your thing you were talking about earlier.
yeah,
Um, so when you're exploring the economic feasibility of the Federation and getting things to go in commercial avenues of whatever, um, commercial vessels in TOS in the original series, a freighter, the SS Deidre, is only able to do warp 2. Okay.
yeah,
So warp 2 is 16C. Okay. 16 times the speed of light. So you can make Alpha Centauri in 1/4 of a year.
yep,
Okay. So for you to get like from like let's say you wanted to go to someplace good, say 4 to 10 light years away, your rough estimate of speed or rough estimate of time on the 16C using the new scale is still going to take you 91 to 229 days. Okay.
but still, that's so
So
much faster.
yeah. So on warp 3, which is 3 times 3 times 3, it's essentially 81C. So you're now taking 18 to 45 days. That's much more reasonable.
Very
You
much
want to
reason.
pick up some cargo, take it over someplace. Hey, that's a reasonable amount of time. That's roughly akin to what we would do for shipping these days. Okay,
Hmm.
so in that mindset, in that vein, more than likely that would work for fast transit, moving cargo back and forth for like what we expect, and then big bulk cargo stuff you don't really care about. Oh, look, I picked up some more. Well, stick it in the old freighter, pop it over, warp 2.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. If you're
and
just
then,
sending raw materials, that's all you
mhm,
need it for. Yeah.
yeah, you don't need to worry about it being fresh or it being, there tomorrow. Warp 5, which is like the high end for commercial or civilian speeds, would be 625C. Okay. So that gets you somewhere like say between 4 and 10 light years in 2 to 6 days on that scale.
Hmm.
So relatively speaking, you can get your stuff there and get things taken care of. Now in Star Trek Next Generation, I'm just going to go ahead and go relative to that, because the original series, of course, is slower because the maximum safe cruising speed was like 6. After you hit 6, Gotti starts fretting and he starts
Yeah,
sweating
yeah,
really profusely, and people start worrying that he's going to, chew something up or like bite the console because he's freaking out so bad.
yeah. And the
Um,
sound effect gets turned up an octave. Yeah, you know how it goes.
so the
Yeah,
the thing is that at warp 8, you're going 4,000, yeah, 4,096C. Okay, so you're able to get a good, you got a good clip. You're able to go ahead and go from point A to point B. You're able to project your ship or your forces where they need to be. Most of the ships that we saw in Star Trek Next Generation are able to do warp 8 as a maximum safe cruising speed. At least the majority of them. I mean, Enterprise is able to do 9.2. The Defiant, it was like 9. Don't even get up onto Intrepid. I mean, Intrepid is like, hey, look, I can stylize and go 9.975. Look at me.
yeah.
Um, but, to be able to go ahead and get across the Federation, just to sort of frame this for you so you understand just how big is. So we're looking at the size of the Federation. It's 8,000 light years across. If you're using a standard warp
You broke up
scale,
there, man.
or the power 4 warp factor of 8, 4096C, that'll
Oh,
still take you
crap.
1.95 years. It's going to take you almost 2 years to get across the Federation.
Damn it.
And so if you're going from the edge of the disk towards the core, it's going to be about a year. And to go essentially, like, say, from the top of the disk down through it, it'll probably take you about 6 months, maybe, or so, or less. So the difference is that you're with
Hi.
hi.
My internet is acting very wonky right now, and so it dropped me out. But
Okay.
I went ahead and fired up the hotspot on my phone, and I'm using that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I won't say who I work for, and you're not going to probably want to say who I work for. But anyway, hopefully your problem is not related to my job.
No. It starts with a C. Is my problems with.
Fair enough.
And ends with an
All right.
X.
So,
but anyway,
where was I?
you were talking. You were up to the warp 8.
Okay. So, getting across the Federation, right, at warp 8, using the power 4 scale, which is, I'm just going to call it the old scale, because we're going to shuffle the power 3 warp scale off, because it just doesn't work. So assuming that it's power 4 and it's 4096C, to get across the Federation, being 8,000 light years across, would take you almost 2 years, 1.95 years. That's a long lag time, but it's still a lot better than what you got the other way around.
Very much so.
Now, going from the spinward toward the core, you're going to hit that in about 1 year, and then that's about 4,000 light years, 4,500 light years, and then to go through the disk, basically 1,000 light years.
The thickness.
You'd basically be doing like a quarter of that. So you'd be able to go ahead and hit it in like 3 months.
Now,
that seems pretty reasonable.
I am currently going through all the Star Treks again, and I am on season 6 of TNG.
Okay.
But I seem to recall from way back in the day, as they were all traipsing around using their new high-end warp, somebody came along and told them, no, you're ripping up the fabric of space. Right. You need to slow down.
Yep. The warp 5 speed limit.
What?
The warp 5 speed limit.
Yeah. So that all of a sudden made everything much, much larger again.
Yeah, it would take you a lot longer to get across, of course, at that speed, because like we talked about before, warp 5 being like the high end of like any kind of commercial vessel, be looking at 625C. So just basically say hi to Shadow. That's Shadow right there. So you'd be looking at taking 8,000 divided by 625. You get a rough idea. Roughly how. Yeah, and then you take that by and take it by that, and you can figure out how much of a year or how many years it would take. It would take a lot longer. One of the things we were talking about, and you talked about earlier, was that the fleet sizes are affected by your speed. And one of the things in getting into why Scotty's sweating bullets, and this also affects your fleet size, is how fast you can travel. Because one of the things is, and I'm going to share a little pithy definition, in case you have not heard of this. Yeah. There's a term called interstellar medium, okay, the ISM, and that is a measure of the matter and radiation that exists in space between star systems.
Right.
This includes gas in ionic, atomic, and molecular form, as well as dust and cosmic rays.
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to remember, and this is just generally, is as you move through space, you are essentially running into things, even if you have your deflector shield or whatever you want to call it, you are still running into things. Okay.
See,
so the faster you go ahead.
This has always been one of my, head canon things. All right, because I was fully cognizant of the fact that even at the outlandish speeds they were traveling at, the stars would not do what they do when they're doing warp. All right, I always, I knew that it wouldn't, you wouldn't see the streaks, the stars wouldn't be moving like that. But in my head canon, that was micro impact things that are sliding off the shield as they're going through. That was in my head canon what the lights were from.
I actually like your head canon. Yeah. I accept that. I always thought it was basically them putting it out on the computer screen, be like, "Computer, show me the streakies because I like the streakies."
Yeah, it's a screensaver. Okay, great.
Yeah, basically, either that or it's the little, there's a thing in Babylon 5, just to borrow from another series, where they have essentially somebody ejects, I won't say who did, but ejects a toy, a teddy bear, and essentially comes in and lands on the guy's, window. And what did you find? And it's like, it's a teddy bear. So,
Are you saying they stole that for Section 31 from Babylon 5?
I think they stole a lot of stuff.
They did.
Section. IMF, like you were talking about, actually, I was going to say, you pretty much read my mind. IMF, Guardians of the Galaxy, the other one that was like, there's a scene towards just to sort of segue back to what I was talking about here in a moment, but there's a scene where they're in the bar, and I was like, wow, this seems a lot like an episode of Power, almost.
Is it just me, or were they going for the look of Fifth Element?
They were, I think. The production design had that look, but the other thing was that it's one of those things where I'm trying to be kind of kind, but at the same time, it's like you had great choreography for the fight scene between Michelle Yeoh and the other guy, but it was so poorly filmed, and over the messing with the effects on it and the jinky cam really ruined it. I mean, it was stylistically, it wasn't enjoyable because you're just like, this is Time Cop. Man, this not to be cruel or anything to anybody who likes Time Cop, but we're past the 90s, guys. Come on.
It was so Cloverfield.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it was Blair Witch Project all over again.
Yeah, it was somebody trying really hard to interject something old style into Star Trek nowadays, and then doesn't have a good fit.
The one scene where they're fighting on the platform that's up in the air, all right, it's all janky and all over the place. This is the point where I was like, oh, come on, people, you could have done it right. They're fighting, and it's all janky like it was, all right? And then our protagonist, which, why was she a protagonist? No.
Because she was the big name.
Yeah, I mean, she's a freaking, she's a genocidal cannibal, all right? She does not get a redemption arc. No. All right? And they didn't even try. Everything was exposition. But anyways, janky, moving around. They're fighting on the platform. And then she gets knocked off. And she's going to catch herself and come up the other side. I mean, everything is so transparent in this. That trope was going to happen. Just like when she was fighting the bad guy. I knew automatically who the bad guy was. But anyways, so... And then she comes up the other side. Everything's all janky until they want to show her grabbing onto the rail and coming up. And that was perfect, solid, no shake. Everything was right there. And then it was back to the janky stuff. I'm like, oh, come on. You could have done better. That was...
The other thing about the... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Now, to say, that was just a sheer bad choice when it came to the director and to the film editor. It was just bad choice.
I agree. So, the platform, actually... to me, reminded me of the whole 2009 Star Trek film with the whole drilling platform that was like drilling into Vulcan.
For me,
That's
for me, it reminded me of the 1980s Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom
I could see that too.
because they're
I
going
could
through
see
those
that.
tunnels and stuff. That was straight Temple of
Mhm.
Doom.
Yeah, I could see that. It gave so many allegories and allusions to other things. It's hard to ignore. I mean, you're
It
just
had
like left with like okay.
my
Um,
wife was asking me. She's like, "There was nothing good." I was like, I told her the kindest thing I can say about this is that it has so little of Star Trek in it that it can almost be ignored as a Star Trek movie.
Actually, the thing that kind of makes me laugh is that the ship is basically a garbage hauler, right?
There was no nacelles.
There is no nacelles. It has it's a garbage hauler.
Yeah,
So
it's
uh,
garbage.
uh, you're basically running around in Homeboys in Outer Space. If you remember that show, that had it was UPN. It was I think he even had James Doohan in it at one point in time. But anyway, it
I'll have to
was
look that one up.
early UPN stuff that came out around Voyager when Voyager first premiered. Anyway, it was yeah. It's something I try and forget the trauma, but it was out there. So getting back to what I was going to say is the whole thing with moving through space and trying to get from point A to point B. You have to have the power to do it.
Yeah,
Number one, you can't just like, hey, I'm going to go over to Vulcan today at work 8. You got to have the power to do it. So one of the problems is that as you're moving through space, you have to have a deflector shield because
hmm
what happens is these particles, as they're traveling at relativistic velocities, let's say.
beyond relativistic properties.
Well, I'm not even getting into warp's drive yet.
Yeah,
We're just talking like, oh, we're moving at 0.45 C. It hits you, you're going to either suffer some severe damage or you're going to have some radiation event.
yeah,
And if you keep hitting you, like basically what ends up happening is you're turning that into a particle beam. You're aiming it at yourself as
yep,
you're flying in space.
very much so.
So we've had discussions in Trek BBS about, hey, that's not a big deal. We'll just shrug it off. Well, I don't think you'd shrug it off. There are limitations to how fast you can go depending on how much power you have. I'm going to go ahead and reference to something that's called Project Row. If you want to check that site out, it's awesome. Gives you a lot of nice material to look over. If you ever want to do research on space travel, space combat, that kind of thing, awesome site. One of the things on it is called Rick Robinson's First Law of Space Combat. And my cats are having a cow. Hold on a moment. Hey, you two. I love you both. You're both pretty. Come on. So, what Rick Robinson's First Law of Space Combat gives you some idea of kinetic damage imparted by particles impacting an object while traveling at only minute fractions of c. So essentially, if you want to refer to that and you can see what it does, that also gives you context for Mudd's Women, where they're traveling through the asteroid field in the original series, and they're having a problem projecting their deflector shield in front of Mudd's ship to keep it from having an asteroid smash it.
Right.
That's a lot of power. It takes a lot of energy to project energy. Essentially, it couples for distance. So as you get past, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going off on a tangent here, and I didn't mean to, but oh, hold on a second. I gotta sneeze. Pardon me. I didn't hit the mute fast enough. Damn it. Asteroid fields are not that dense. That's it. Okay, go
No,
ahead.
but if your ship it looks like a banana, it might run into an asteroid field that looks like something from Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back.
I've
Just a little
got.
aside.
I was given as a gift a. Who was coming out with them? Something Moss. They
Eagle
had
Moss.
Eagle Moss.
Eagle
Yeah.
Moss.
They had an Eagle Moss Harry Mudd ship, and someone gave me that. My wife gave me that for Christmas one year, and so I've got that up on the wall. It doesn't look like a banana.
No, the
It's
original
more
looked
like
like a
an
banana.
eggplant. But go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, once we move past going into warp speeds, then essentially, then you start having to really project power, and you have, as a rising issue, as you push faster through this interstellar medium, you have to bump up your power for your matter-antimatter reactor, because essentially you're having to. It's not just like, oh, it's sort of just gradually coming up. As you push up, those particles are coming in faster and faster and
Mm-hmm.
faster and faster and faster. So essentially, like I said before, it's a particle beam, but now you've really, really coupled it up. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're pushing almost like you're driving into a high energy X-ray, not soft, but high energy, hard X-ray laser
Yeah.
coming right down your throat. And so essentially at some point, your navigational deflectors are going to be overloaded, because you're basically pouring all the power that you have in your warp core, not only out to your nacelles for the warp field, talking fictionally, because
Yeah.
those things don't exist yet, but also to the navigational deflectors, and you have to balance that out. You can only do so much after so long, and then essentially you have to worry about coolant, and then then you have Scotty going, "Oh, Captain, the engine's going to blow up any minute
Yeah.
now," So you're limited by these things, and
Yeah.
TNG ships handle it much better, but in the original series, it wasn't so much of a great thing. So that being said, right, with all that being taken into account, and you're looking at how these ships move and how they get around, when you take into consideration how big the Federation is and how much force you can project in a particular area, then it comes out, like you were talking about, how many ships you can have in an area, how fast you can deploy them, how many you would need. So one of the things that came out was, if you were to go ahead and have a Federation as large as we were talking about, the core Federation worlds such as Earth and other densely populated areas would have a significant Starfleet presence. And you would have more on the borders, of course, for like threats like the
Mm-hmm.
Klingon Empire or the Romulans, depending on the situation. And so ran it through an AI, because, well, it's there for something.
Yeah.
Total fleets, 15 to 25 fleets. Ships per fleet, 10,000 to 20,000 ships total per fleet. The capital defense and patrol ships, if you want to take a low number, would be 20 to 30% of that fleet. So you're roughly looking at anywhere from like 2,000 to, say, 3,000, maybe 6,000 ships, depending on the case. And then the rest of it is basically exploration, science, and support ships. Okay. So
basically, the way that I see it is,
mm-hmm.
even though they didn't display it as such, the
Mm-hmm.
Federation would be as large and as monolithic as the Star Wars Empire.
In a lot of ways it would be. Yeah.
Instead of evil, benevolent. All right, theoretically.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tyranny is a nice guy.
yeah, and that's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be the nice guys, order, all the stuff like that, which chafes
Mm-hmm.
those people who live for a little bit of chaos. But like like you were saying, and one of the things I was thinking about while you were saying it is the fact that each of these capital ships would be treated like an aircraft carrier nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and an aircraft carrier doesn't travel alone. It
No.
travels with an entire cavalcade of support vessels,
Yeah.
and none of that is represented, which it should be
No.
represented.
Oh, yeah.
And like one thing that I do enjoy about Star Trek Online is
Mm-hmm.
if you start, really getting into the nitty gritty and doing stuff, is the simple fact that not only do you have all of these, you know, these officers in your crew, but you can send them off on away missions,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things is that as each of these fleet elements is in a certain sector, all right, they wouldn't just just beyond this. It would be a a constant movement of vessels on and off of these capital ships, ferrying
Mhm.
people, all kinds of stuff happening. It would be a mobile. I mean, basically, each of the smaller ships would be like a mobile town, and the main capital ships would be a mobile city of things going
Mhm.
on.
Yeah.
And which just leads me to wonder how many on a ship the size of the Enterprise D, how many Starbucks are there?
You did
Because
get my
there's
order
a
right.
Starbucks across from a Starbucks, so there's going to be a lot on
I dropped down to deck 7 for a
there.
cappuccino, and they didn't put the proper amount of sugar in it. I'm
Yeah,
upset. What's
it's
going on here?
it's horrible. Uh,
Yeah,
my perfect future is just ruined now. But
the
no,
utopia collapses.
but that's one of the first things we wanted to talk about, and we're going to have to go ahead and um, tie this up here soon because we've been talking for quite a while.
Mhm.
Is how much how the sheer size of what we're talking about. I mean, there's
Mhm.
going to be other things that we want to get into later, in future discussions,
Mhm.
and possibly get other people on board to talk with us about. But
Yep.
my main point for all this is just pointing out how freaking huge everything should be. It
Mhm.
should not be like, what did we say at one point? If the Federation was the Wild West, what they represent right now is three horses and a wagon trying to corral the entire Wild West.
Mhm.
And
Oh yeah.
no, no.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like the longest response time that I could find for putting all these numbers together. So the fleet was 150,000 ships or 500,000 ships. The longest response time is 3 weeks
Yeah,
in Star Trek Incarnation time. In nominal response time, like, hey, Bob down the street got his nacelle blown off. He needs help. 5 days.
yeah.
Sometimes it would take up to a few months to get somebody out there, and you could, if you're like in the boonies of the Federation, you could be out there for a while,
Very much
um,
so.
sitting on your butt, wanting to know when
But
AAA is gonna show up.
keep in mind, we, from where we live and
Mhm.
what we are used to, we are used to an immediate response. I mean,
Mhm.
we live in a country that can have boots on the ground anywhere in the world in
Mhm.
a day. 2 days, they've
Right.
got boots on the ground. Within less than a week, there's a huge military presence. All right.
Right.
But before we used our entire, entire country's income in order to fund the military, things were a lot different. It would
Mhm.
take conceivably weeks to months to get somebody out to a place. There would be a reason
Mhm.
why, if your plane went down in the sticks somewhere, you could conceivably be living off the land until the next season,
Mhm.
from winter until summer, before they
Mhm.
could get somebody out to you. There was a reason that they had to have those emergency kits on the airplanes if your plane went
Mhm.
down. That way you could exist for the unknown amount of time it would take for them to get somebody out to you.
Oh yeah.
And I think we've forgotten that, and that's one of the things also I think the writers for the shows have forgotten is
Mhm.
just once you get away from the main lanes and get away from the main population centers, things get really dark and
Mhm.
things get really lonely.
Mhm.
And they need to have more ships coming in with people half mad from space sickness from talking to themselves for 6 months and, eventually carved their own Wilson out of a damn soap bar. Okay? Uh,
Mhm. They went Commodore Decker Matty.
I'm thinking more like if you remember at the beginning of Waterworld, that crazy guy who's like trading things. What do you got? You got paper? I think more like that kind of crazy.
That actually makes me really want to have a Cyrano Jones episode and any kind of Strange New Worlds or whatever,
Yeah.
where he's like that. And he's got triple screen. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's like the writing for TOS was more or less based upon that concept of World War II. Because there
Yeah.
were people who were stuck on islands for years
Mm-hmm.
after World War II. They didn't find them until who knows when. But,
Seven.
like, the experience was, hey, we got this guy who still thinks World War II is going on.
Yeah.
But,
Not quite sure.
nowadays everybody's like, well, we can get in this special plane and we can drop Marines on the other side of the planet within like 2 hours.
Yep.
They have no perspective of, scale and distance and time and how speed affects everything.
They
Because everything is like now, like
they
that.
they have sped everything up to the to the fastest that they can to make everything happen immediately, and that's the reason
Mhm.
we ended up with a movie where a garbage scow can make it halfway across the frickin' sector in 3 hours.
I will say, if you're a Star Trek fan and you want to see a map of the Federation and map of Federation space, you can actually check out Section 31. It gives you a really nice one to look at
Yeah, how close
with
was that
notation.
nebula to that planet? That's what I want to know. I mean, if it was further away than I could chuck a biscuit, then it was too damn far for that scow to make it.
Oh yeah,
No, that was a sad movie. That was a sad,
it
sad
it,
movie,
it,
and I'm
it
sad that they wasted the money on it. I'm sad that they
mhm,
wasted the talent on it, and
mhm.
I'm sad that they wasted what little we had of Star Trek cred on it.
I can see that. I
Because
actually think they were trying to do a soft boot for a TV series,
totally were. They did, from what
and
I understand, they were going to be doing a series, and it totally
mhm,
feels like a series. It
yeah,
totally feels like the pilot episode to a series. But from what I was told, they took the first
mhm,
two episodes, they mashed them together, all
mhm,
right, to make this
mhm,
90-minute movie.
mhm,
And that any movie that's 90 minutes, you know, there's going to be problems. And then, from what I understand, they rushed it out
mhm.
because they were trying to capitalize on Michelle Yeoh's recent Oscar win,
Popularity. Yeah.
and it just does a disservice to her and a
Mhm.
disservice to the entire thing.
I agree. Um, it's sad in that it's like any project. If you rush it out, it's not going to turn out the way you want it to be. Take your time. If you need to take extra amount of time to do it, do it.
There's the project pyramid.
Hmm.
You got speed, you got quality, and you got money. You
Hmm.
can have it fast and good, but it's not going to be cheap. You
Yeah.
can have it fast and cheap, but it's not going to be good. Or
Hmm.
you can have it good and fast, but it's, I mean, basically, once you go with two of those legs, you're dropping the third one. And
Right.
somehow, with this one, they dropped all three legs. I'm not sure how they did it.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, someone.
The,
I
the
mean,
thing also that was evident that they, like you were talking about, and when you watch the movie,
yeah.
is like where they split it is where they go section 2 or transmission 2 or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, well, this is where the episode break was supposed to be.
Two of your Earth weeks. What the hell was that?
Yeah, I was like, I would have accepted that. We were doing IMF in Star Trek a little bit more if we hadn't really gone with the whole '90s esque feel.
IMF. You've
Because
said that several times. What's IMF?
International Impossible Mission Force,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mission Impossible, IMF.
All right.
Um, So,
Yeah.
the funny part is Star Trek actually sat side by side with Mission Impossible. And, for a while, Leonard Nimoy was actually a cast member
I,
on Mission
I think I
Impossible.
remember seeing that. Yeah.
So
No.
I'm like, it's kind of ironic that they tried to take Star Trek and turn it into Mission Impossible, but it is
And
what it is.
it's like the
It's done is
entire.
done.
I'm just bitching about it now. The entire show was. I mean, the entire thing was just exposition after exposition, and some of the filming was like, okay, He's 15 feet away from her with the gun drawn, camera cut, and then she's able to do a hip throw and throw him. How did she get that 15 feet in there without him? I don't know. I don't know. All I'm saying is that whatever film school they got this director out of, they need to go back and finish their classes. That's it. Uh,
Did, did he actually go to film school, or if he did go to film school, did he actually attend all of his classes?
yeah,
That's
did
the
he
other question. I
graduate?
really,
All right.
yeah.
Who
So,
is his uncle? That's what I want to know. All right. What
but
kind of nepotism was at work here? But
that's a
anyway,
good question in this day and age, because nepotism seems to be a common problem.
oh, it is. It is. It has completely surpassed the good old boy network, and it's gotten to the point of basically it's gotten to where Victorian England was with
I
the
agree with that.
gentry being given all the prime, jobs and postings and ranks and all the stuff like that. But if you were not gentry, you did not get them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't know how to do your job, you got job security.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know who my uncle is? Yeah.
I will
All right.
brush the breadcrumbs off my shirt, and I'm still
Yeah.
a better man than you.
Oh, Bat Boy. Yeah, no, okay. Uh, so, all right. So, do we want to try doing this again next Saturday?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit it up again, and we'll tune in, same bat time, same bat channel.
Excellent. I think we should do that. Quite well. Thank you. Well, okay, very good. Until then, we will see all of you next week, and we will talk about something else. And if you have any ideas of things that you wish to see or have us discuss, or if you have any thoughts on the things that we discuss, please leave some comments down below. And any comments that we get, we will pour through and see about discussing on our next episode. So until next week, nanu nanu.
Nanu nanu.
We didn't plan that.
No, we didn't plan that. That was completely right.